There's a kind of common sense many of us live by without ever questioning it. That is, if something is uncomfortable for us, we should handle it on our own, quietly, privately, without involving anyone else. It sounds responsible, mature, self sufficient. And for most of us, it didn't start as a belief, it started as a solution. Most people don't decide one day to isolate. They learn. They learn because when they tried to share, something didn't land. They were met with advice when they needed presence, with reassurance when they needed space, with fixing when they needed staying. Sometimes the response was well meaning, sometimes it was awkward, and sometimes it hurt. And after enough of those moments, the nervous system makes a quiet decision. This is safer to do alone. So we internalize the rule. If I'm upset, I'll deal with it myself. If I'm overwhelmed, I'll manage it internally. If I'm struggling, I'll wait until I'm clearer or calmer or more put together. Not because we don't want connection, but because connection hasn't felt reliable. This isn't withdrawal, it's discernment. Over time, this becomes invisible. We don't think of it as isolation. We think of it as being capable. We tell ourselves, I don't want to burden anyone. Other people have their own problems. No one really knows what to say anyway. I'll talk later once I've sorted it all out. And all of that makes sense. Given what most of us have lived through, of course, we learn to hold ourselves together privately. Here's an image that's been helpful for me. It's like we're all walking around in invisible bubble suits. Not because we don't want contact, but because contact hurt before. The bubble keeps things from getting in too fast, from landing too hard, from overwhelming us. And even inside these bubbles, we still want connection. So we bump into each other. We gesture, we reach, but it's bubble to bubble. We feel close, but not quite touched. We sense longing, but not relief. And here's where it gets really interesting. Because we don't just bump into each other randomly. A lot of what we do, especially with people we love, are bids. Little bids for attention. Little bids for connection. It might be a comment, a question, a shared observation, a joke, a look, a "did you see that?" It's not always profound. It's often tiny. The whole point of a bid is simple. Will you meet me here for a second? But when we're in bubble suits, something changes. If I'm protected, if I'm braced, if I'm already tight inside myself and you bump into me, that bump doesn't land as a bid. It lands as an interruption, as a criticism, even a threat. Not because you meant it that way, but because my bubble is interpreting contact as danger. So instead of hearing, "Do you want to connect?" I'm hearing, "Do you think I'm stupid? Are you correcting me? Are you trying to one-up me? Are you judging me?" And then I respond to the thing I think is happening, not the thing that's actually happening. This is how bids get rejected without us even realizing it. Sometimes it shows up in the smallest moments. You're watching a show, someone says out loud what just happened, and instead of being a way of sharing the moment, it lands as, "Why are you explaining this to me?" Or, "Do you think I can't follow along?" Or maybe you have a conversation. One of those conversations you actually enjoy, where you go back and forth, you're debating, you're exploring. And later, the person brings that topic up again, and they repeat something that you said as if it just occurred to them. And instead of this landing as, "I've been thinking about you, I'm still here with you," it lands as, "You didn't hear me? You're dismissing me? You're taking credit for my perspective." Again, this isn't about right or wrong. It's about what bubbles do. Bubbles turn contact into threat. This is one of the quiet shapes of loneliness. Not the absence of people, but the experience of trying to connect while protected. You can be surrounded by others and still feel alone because the bubbles meet before people do. Here's an important detail. When someone is living inside a bubble, managing themselves internally, thinking ahead, preparing for what might go wrong, they're unavailable to others because they're unavailable to themselves. All of their attention is being used to stay intact. And presence requires available attention. So if your whole morning is spent in your head rehearsing everything you have to be ready for, if your system is already bracing, then when someone reaches for you, even gently, you don't experience it as warmth. You experience it as pressure. And now you have to protect yourself from the very thing you want. This is why connection can feel so close and yet unreachable. Why intimacy can feel missing even when love is present. Why someone can be physically right there and feel completely unavailable. Not because they don't care, because they're not in contact with themselves. And here's another common sense belief that keeps bubbles intact. It's a simple sentence. I already know what you mean. With strangers or acquaintances, we might ask, we might clarify, we might say, what did you mean by that? But with someone we're close to, something flips. We assume we know. I already know what you mean. I already know what you're doing. And I already know what I have to do next. That certainty is the bubble tightening. It's the nervous system saying, no surprises. Because surprises are dangerous when you've been hurt before. So we pre-decide, we interpret, we assign meaning, we react. And the person we love is no longer a person. They become a pattern we've already solved. That's not intimacy. That's a surveillance system. And underneath all of this, quietly, is usually a fear. A fear of being hurt, a fear of being wrong, a fear of being insufficient, a fear of being seen as less. So we block people out. And it's often the people who matter most. Because if they hurt us, it lands deeper. So the bubble becomes thicker. Now, here's where the paradox deepens. We isolate to protect ourselves. And at the same time, we long for relief. We hope, often without realizing it, that someone will see our struggle and somehow bring us the ease we're missing. But because the bubble is still there, that relief can't quite get through. So the longing comes out sideways as frustration, as complaint, as dissatisfaction, as blame that feels justified. Not because we're trying to be difficult, because we want relief and we don't know how to ask for it cleanly. Sometimes we don't even know what we want. We just know we don't like how this feels. And when we don't know what we want, the mind tries to solve it through interpretation, through mind reading, through story. Here's another place the bubble shows up. We expect others to read our minds because asking directly feels risky. It requires us to name what we want in the moment we want it. And that can feel vulnerable. Not in the inspirational sense, in the raw sense. Because once I name what I want, I can be told no. I can be misunderstood. I can be dismissed. I can be rejected. So instead, we make silent bids. We do our tasks loudly. We sigh. We get busy. We withdraw. and we hope the other person will notice. And then we feel hurt when they don't. And again, this is not bad communication. This is protection. This is the bubble trying to keep you safe from the pain of not being met. Now, it would be easy here to say, just open up, just communicate, just be vulnerable. But that advice often doesn't work because opening up doesn't dissolve the bubble. If anything, it can make you feel more exposed inside it. Vulnerability without safety just means being unprotected in an unsafe space. The bubble doesn't come down through willpower. It comes down when the nervous system senses kindness. This is where being kind to yourself quietly becomes the gateway. Not as technique, not as a mindset, but as a way the bubble starts to soften from the inside. When we stop attacking ourselves, when we stop demanding that we be different first, something loosens. And when the bubble softens internally, connection becomes possible externally. You might hear language like being unfinished and not know exactly what that means. It's okay. Being unfinished doesn't mean broken. It doesn't mean confused forever. It doesn't mean handing someone a mess and calling it connection. Being unfinished is much simpler than that. It means I don't have the answer yet, or I don't know what this is, or I'm feeling something and I'm not sure what to do with it, or I don't need you to fix it. I just don't want to be alone in it. It means being present without resolution. And that's something most of us were never shown how to do together. It's also important to say this clearly. You were often right to be careful. You were right to stop sharing in certain environments. Right to notice when people rushed, fixed, minimized, or disappeared. Right to protect yourself. Caution is not closing, it's intelligence. But intelligence can outlive the conditions that required it. And when that happens, the bubble remains, even when the cost becomes visible. The cost shows up as quiet loneliness, emotional fatigue, longing without direction, connection that feels close but never quite lands, bids that keep bouncing off the bubble wall. And the hardest part is this. We think the problem is the other person. We think they aren't meeting my needs, they aren't paying attention, they aren't showing affection, they aren't understanding me. And sometimes that is true. But sometimes what's true is simpler. The bubble is interpreting everything through threat. So even when someone tries to meet us, we can't feel it. And even when we try to meet them, we bump too hard. And now the bid becomes an attack. So here's the uncommon sense move. Not a solution, just a reorientation. What if safety doesn't come from handling ourselves alone? What if it comes from conditions where the bubble doesn't have to work so hard? Where kindness, turned towards ourselves and others, lets the defenses soften naturally. Where we don't have to earn connection by performing coherence. We don't need to create these conditions today. We don't need to fix our relationships. We don't need to take off the bubble. Just noticing that it's there and why it formed is already a kind of relief. If this feels tender, that makes sense. This strategy protected you, and it may still be protecting you. Nothing has gone wrong. You don't need to take this anywhere. You don't need to share it. You don't need to act on it. Just noticing how much effort it takes to stay protected all the time, and how often your bids are really longing, is enough for now.